Okay, so get this right. There's a place older than Stonehenge.
Older.
Yeah, like way older by 6,000 years.
Wow, that's pretty old.
It's called Göbekli Tepe. It's in Turkey. And it's kind of turning everything we thought we knew about, history on its head.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And we've got some amazing articles here from Smithsonian Magazine and, of course, Wikipedia. Got to have Wikipedia. Plus, some really interesting insights from the historical timekeeper.
Oh, cool.
So today we're doing a deep dive into Göbekli Tepe. Figuring out why it's such a big deal and how it's like shaking up our whole understanding of early civilization. What do you think?
I mean, it's amazing, right, how Göbekli Tepe just changes everything we thought we knew about human progress. It throws a wrench in the whole traditional story of how societies evolved.
Totally. Okay, so paint me a picture. What are we actually looking at when we talk about Göbekli Tepe?
Okay, so picture this. Massive stone pillars.
Okay, how massive?
Massive. Like T-shaped, some weighing up to 10 tons. 10 tons.
Yeah, and they're all carved intricately with all these depictions of animals and abstract symbols. And they're arranged in these grand circular structures.
It sounds incredible and kind of spooky, honestly.
It's definitely awe-inspiring, especially when you consider the era we're talking about, the amount of planning, coordination, the artistry.
10-ton pillars. That's like what, trying to move a small bus?
Yeah.
How do they do that? Back then, no modern technology, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's one of the biggest mysteries surrounding Göbekli Tepe. I mean, the sheer scale of the construction, the precision of the carvings. It all points to a level of sophistication that we didn't think existed back then, in hunter-gatherer societies.
Right. It's almost unbelievable. Okay, so how did this incredible site come to light? It's not like it was just sitting there waiting to be found, was it?
Oh, it's a great story. Almost like something out of an Indiana Jones movie,
Okay, I'm listening.
So it's 1994, and this German archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, he's surveying the region.
And he comes across this hill, Göbekli Tepe.
Which means?
Belly Hill in Turkish.
Okay, Belly Hill.
At first, everybody just thought it was another medieval cemetery, nothing special. But Schmidt, he had a hunch.
Thank goodness for hunches.
Right. And what he found, well, it was truly extraordinary. A gigantic Stone Age site.
What do you mean Stone Age?
How old are we talking?
We're talking way back. Between 9,500 and 8,000 BCE?
BCE. Seriously.
Seriously. The pre-pottery Neolithic, they didn't even have pottery, let alone metal tools.
No pottery.
Nope.
But they built these massive stone structures. I mean, this changes everything.
It does, doesn't it? And get this, only less than 5% of the site has been excavated so far.
You're kidding.
Schmidt himself said that archaeologists could be digging there for another 50 years.
50 years? I mean, wow. What else do you think is down there? What are they looking for? Well, I think one of the biggest questions is, the purpose. Why would these hunter-gatherers, right before this huge societal shift towards agriculture, why would they pour so much time and effort into this, incredibly complex site?
Yeah, it's a good question. We know it's old, really old, way more sophisticated than we thought, and huge. But what was it for? Some giant prehistoric party place? Or was it more, spiritual?
Well, Schmidt thought it was the world's first temple, a cathedral on a hill, he called it. He pointed to the hilltop location. You get those amazing panoramic views and the potential for astronomical alignment.
Ooh, astronomical alignments.
Yeah.
It does have that ceremonial vibe, doesn't it?
It totally does.
And, I was thinking, the historical timekeeper mentioned something about all the animal bones found at the site. What's the deal with that?
Oh, yeah. They found a ton of animal remains: gazelle, boar, sheep, birds. And here's the thing.
What?
They were all wild. No domesticated animals, no sign of agriculture at all.
So they were still hunter-gatherers, but gathering in this one specific place for what? What does that tell us about them, about their social structure, their beliefs?
It challenges this whole idea we've had, right? That complex societies needed agriculture first. That settling down and farming came before before complex social structures could develop. Göbekli Tepe kind of flips that on its head.
Completely.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for, practical stuff, like farming or shelter, what was it for? We talked about the temple idea, but Are there other theories out there?
Oh, tons. Some think it might have been a place for like social gatherings or rituals or even astronomical observations. Like we said, the hilltop location has these amazing views, and some think there might be star alignments.
It's like a giant puzzle, but we've only got a few pieces.
Yeah.
And to make it even more confusing, they deliberately buried the whole site around 8000 BCE. Why do that? Why cover it all up?
Another great question. Why hide something so monumental, right? Was it to preserve it, some sort of ritual, or just a practical decision to, reclaim the land for something else? It really keeps archaeologists guessing. But you have to wonder, right? It's almost like they were intentionally leaving something behind for us to find, like a message from the past.
A message from the past. Man, that's kind of creepy, but cool. This is already shaping up to be one of our most fascinating deep dives. We've got this incredible site that challenges everything, evidence of like sophisticated social structures and maybe even religious practices way earlier than we thought possible, and a million unanswered questions.
And we haven't even talked about the most exciting part, the symbols, those carvings. They could hold a wealth of information just waiting to be deciphered.
Right. The carvings. They're not just random doodles, are they? Tell me more.
Oh, they are so much more than doodles. We'll get into that right after the break. These carvings, yeah, they're definitely not just random doodles. I mean, look at them. They're so carefully done, like engraved. And they must have meant something, something important.
Right. It's not like they just had some free time and decided to, decorate the place. So, okay, we've got all these animals.
Yeah.
Lions, bulls, boars.
Oh, and foxes and snakes, vultures. It's like a whole zoo.
Prehistoric zoo. What do you think they were trying to say with all these animals? Like, what do they tell us about the people who carved them?
That's the big question, right? Some people think they might be totems, representing different clans or social groups or something. Others, they think maybe they were part of some kind of like shamanistic ritual, or maybe beliefs about the afterlife.
The afterlife. That's interesting. Didn't the Smithsonian article talk about vultures?
Yeah.
Like how they were important in some cultures?
Yeah. Vultures are all over the place at Göbekli Tepe. And other sites nearby from the same time period, too. It's weird, right?
It is kind of weird. I mean, vultures, they're not exactly the prettiest birds. But I guess they were important.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're often seen as, like, connected to death, right?
Right.
But in some cultures, they're also seen as, like, messengers between the world of the living and the dead, like carrying souls up to the sky.
Oh, that's deep. So maybe these vulture carvings are telling us something about how the people at Göbekli Tepe thought about death, or like what they thought happened after you died.
It's definitely a possibility. And think about it. This is like right when people are starting to figure out agriculture, or they're changing their whole way of life, starting to control nature more. That must have a huge impact on how they saw the world,
Yeah, totally. Like maybe those carvings are like their way of trying to understand nature, or even like appease the forces of nature.
Yeah, I like that. It makes sense, right? As they moved away from being hunter-gatherers, where they were totally dependent on nature, and toward farming, their relationship with nature had to change. And that would show up in their art, their rituals, their beliefs.
Right. It's a huge shift. But we can't forget about those abstract symbols either. The 8 shapes, the crescents, the discs. Like some ancient code we're trying to crack.
Yeah, it's true. Those abstract symbols make it even more complicated. We might never know for sure what they meant, but we can make some guesses. Based on what we know about similar symbols from other ancient cultures, maybe they're like astronomical symbols or about time and space or even spiritual beings.
It's like they're trying to tell us something, but we just don't speak the language anymore. It's frustrating, but so interesting.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about archaeology, right? We get to try to piece together these little bits of information, try to figure out what life was like back then, what people believed in. It's like a giant puzzle.
Okay, so we've talked about the why, what these carvings might mean, but what about the how? How did they actually build all this? We're talking massive stones, no cranes, no bulldozers.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? Some researchers, like Schmidt, they thought it would have taken hundreds of people working together. Imagine that. The level of organization, the social structure you'd need, especially for, supposedly simple hunter-gatherers.
Hundreds of people. That's crazy. But I did read about some other theories, like maybe they didn't need huge crowds, maybe smaller groups, even just families could have done it with like clever techniques and stuff.
It's a cool idea, isn't it? Like people using their brains, figuring out how to work smarter, not harder. And there are other cultures around the world that have done, incredible things with limited technology. Ropes, levers, rollers, even water, apparently.
Water? Really? To move huge stones?
Apparently. It just shows you human ingenuity is amazing, right?
Yeah, totally. It makes you wonder, maybe building Göbekli Tepe wasn't just like a one-time thing.
Right.
Maybe it took generations, with each group adding a little bit more, changing it over time.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. It fits with the idea of it being a place where people gathered, over and over again for years and years. And don't forget, we've only excavated a tiny bit of the whole site. Who knows what else is down there?
Oh, it's true. Okay, but let's go back to that burial thing for a minute. It's so weird. Why bury all of this? Like they were hiding something sacred, protecting it.
It's a mystery, isn't it? Maybe they were trying to preserve it for, for future generations, like a time capsule. Or maybe it was like part of a ritual to mark the end of something or a transition to something new.
A time capsule. Wow. Like they knew we'd find it someday. Okay, and speaking of messages, what about those carvings? We've talked about what they might mean, but what about the act of carving itself? What does that tell us?
Oh, good point. I mean, carving like that on such a big scale, it shows a real connection to the materials, to the land, It must have taken so much time and patience. And skill, too. Real artistic vision.
You're right. It wasn't just like something to do on a Tuesday afternoon. They put real thought and effort into this. It makes you wonder about their society, Like, were there special artists? Did some people have more power than others, and that's why they got to decide what was carved?
It's fascinating to think about. It's easy to imagine that there were expert carvers, people who were the masters of their craft, and the choice of which animals, the symbols, where to put everything. It all must have been important culturally, socially.
It's like we're getting these little glimpses into their world, trying to understand what they believed, what they did, how they lived. And it's all happening during a time that we used to think was just about basic survival.
Right. Göbekli Tepe changes that. It shows us that these people were way more complex than we thought. More creative, more spiritual. We've been underestimating them for way too long.
Makes you wonder what else we've gotten wrong about the past, doesn't it? What other big discoveries are waiting out there?
Exactly. That's the exciting part. Who knows what we'll find next?
Speaking of exciting discoveries, I was reading the Wikipedia article, and it mentioned something about water systems and houses at Göbekli Tepe. That doesn't really fit with the idea of it being just a ceremonial site, does it?
Yeah, that's true. It's like finding a swimming pool at Stonehenge. Those discoveries definitely complicate things. Maybe Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a place people visited, maybe some people lived there, at least part-time.
So maybe it was both. Like a sacred site, A&D, a place where people lived, a place for rituals and celebrations, but also everyday life.
It's possible, and it just leads to more questions, right? Like, how did they manage to get water in such a dry area? What were their homes like? What did they do there?
It's like every time we find something out, we just have more questions.
Yeah.
But that's what makes this so cool, right? It's not just about the facts. It's about the journey, the exploration, the mystery.
Could have said it better myself. Göbekli Tepe is about the questions, the curiosity, the sense of wonder. It reminds us that history is alive. It's not just dates and names in a textbook. It's about real people, real lives.
Okay, so we've talked about Göbekli Tepe, the site itself. But let's bring it back to our listeners, What do you find interesting about all this? What's got you hooked?
Well, I think what really gets people is that it makes you think about, our place in history. These hunter-gatherers, they weren't just surviving. They were creating these amazing things, building these incredible structures. They were more than we thought they were.
It is humbling. We thought we knew so much, and then Göbekli Tepe comes along and blows everything up. Shows us that our ancestors were capable of so much more than we gave them credit for.
Exactly. It's not this simple story of progress, like we always thought.
Yeah.
Göbekli Tepe shows us that maybe it's more complicated. Maybe civilizations rise and fall and rise again. Maybe we're not so different from those people after all.
It makes you wonder if we've lost something, something important, like a connection to nature or to each other or to something bigger than ourselves.
Maybe. And maybe by learning about places like Göbekli Tepe, we can, rediscover those things, those lost connections.
I like that. But, I've heard people say, okay, this is all cool, but what does it have to do with me? How does this ancient stuff affect my life? What would you say to that?
I get it. It can seem, far away, but for me, Göbekli Tepe is like this reminder that we're capable of amazing things. If those people back then, with so little, could build something so incredible, imagine what we can do now. With all our knowledge and technology.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, look what we did, now go out and do even better.
Exactly. It's inspiring, right? It shows that we have the potential to solve big problems, to create amazing things, to change the world. We just have to, tap into that collective creativity, that ingenuity.
And it also makes me think about, like, the power of working together. To build something like Göbekli Tepe, they had to cooperate, to share a vision, to put in the effort together.
Definitely. It's about connection, right? About community, about having a purpose. We're social creatures. We need each other. And when we work together, we can do incredible things.
That's a good reminder, especially these days when everything feels so divided. Maybe Göbekli Tepe can teach us something about the importance of, coming together, working towards a common goal.
I think so. And it's not just about big projects, It's about those little things, too. Helping each other, being kind, building community in our own lives.
I love that. So for everyone listening, what do you take away from all this? What are you thinking about? What's stuck with you?
Think about what this discovery really means. What does it tell you about humans, about what we're capable of? Does it make you question what you thought you knew about the past? And what possibilities does it open up for the future? Don't stop exploring. Read more about Göbekli Tepe, watch documentaries, talk to people about it.
Keep that curiosity going. It's how we learn and grow. All right, well, that wraps up our deep dive into Göbekli Tepe. It's been a wild ride. What a place.
It really is an amazing sight. It makes you wonder what else is out there, just waiting to be discovered. The story of humanity is far from over. And with every new find, we get a little closer to understanding who we are, where we come from, and what it all means. I think what gets most people, about Göbekli Tepe is that it makes you rethink your place in history. Like, these hunter-gatherers, they weren't just scraping by, They were thriving, creating these massive, amazing works of art, architecture, rivaling stuff from, way later civilizations.
It really makes you think, right? Like, we have this whole idea of what our ancestors were like, and then boom, Göbekli Tepe shows up. And suddenly it's like, wait a minute, they were way more creative, more advanced, more complex.
Exactly. It's not just a straight line from simple to complex, Göbekli Tepe shows us that maybe it's more like a cycle. Civilizations rise and fall and rise again.
That's a cool way to think about it. Makes you wonder, have we lost something along the way, something those early societies had that we don't anymore?
Maybe. Like a connection to nature or to each other, or even a sense of the spiritual. And maybe by studying these places like Göbekli Tepe, we can find those things again, reconnect with those parts of ourselves.
I like that. But, sometimes people are like, okay, this is all fascinating, but what does it have to do with me? How does knowing about some ancient site change my life? What would you say to that?
It's a good question. For me, Göbekli Tepe is like this reminder of our potential, what we're capable of as humans. If these hunter-gatherers with no technology could create something so incredible, imagine what we can do. We have so much knowledge, so many tools.
Yeah, it's like they're sending us a message from the past, like, hey, check out what we did. Now you go out there and do even better.
Exactly. It's inspiring. We have the potential to solve huge problems, to make amazing things, to change the world. We just have to tap into that potential, that collective creativity.
You're right. And it makes me think about collaboration too. To build something like Göbekli Tepe, they had to work together, right? Share a vision, put in the effort.
Totally. It shows that we need each other, right? That connection, that sense of community, it's part of who we are. And when we work together, we can achieve incredible things.
It's a good reminder, especially nowadays when everything feels so divided. Maybe Göbekli Tepe can teach us something about the importance of coming together, finding common ground.
I think so. And it's not just about big projects either. It's about the small stuff too, helping each other out, being kind, building community in our own lives.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, what do you take away from this? What are you thinking about? What really resonated with you?
I'd say, think about the bigger picture. What does this discovery tell us about human nature, about what we're capable of? Does it change how you think about the past? What possibilities does it open up for the future?
Yeah. And don't stop exploring. Read those articles, watch the documentaries, talk to people about it, keep learning.
Keep that curiosity alive. That's how we grow as individuals and as a society.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into Göbekli Tepe. It's been an incredible journey, full of surprises.
It really has. It makes you wonder, what else is out there? What other mysteries are waiting to be uncovered? The story of humanity keeps going, and with each new discovery, we get a little closer to understanding who we are, where we come from, and what it all means.
Absolutely. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep that sense of wonder alive.